on the one hand, there's like you go back in history, right? And there's been generations where women have been excluded from conversations about money. Not only that, there's been generations of women that didn't work. It's men that were the providers for families. And so that, number one, has been a shift. And so more women are coming into the workforce. And so when you look at statistics saying that women have less money and blah, 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 it's come from a generational thing that is shifting at the moment.
Hi, I'm Sarah and welcome to Small Talk. It's not quite a news headline, but it is what the girls are talking about. And I'm here today with Soph and Maddy from the So Invested podcast. Welcome.
Thanks for having us.
We want to talk today about money, which is a really scary topic and one that we get asked all the time and one that I've also spoken about on the podcast. Like I always make jokes about how bad I am with it, but I want to address that better today. Let's unpack that because I also know it's like a very anxiety inducing time of year because it's also end of financial year and tax time, and I feel like that's usually when I get the most stressed, financial stress, but it's also a very good time, I know, to like reassess going into the new year.
Yeah.
So I'm desperate to hear some tips from you guys on how to do that.
Well, it's such a funny time of year because all of a sudden you get these like notices about how much money you've made this year, and then you have to confront how much money you've spent this year. And it's like you start to see all those numbers and you're like, oh my God.
No, I know. Well, okay. The way I want to phrase the question today, what the girls are talking about is like, how do we change our relationship with money?
I love it. I feel like we've been talking about this so much. We, on the pod, I feel like have gone through this whole transition between, maybe for a little bit of context, like when we started, it was in COVID and we were both very fortunate to be working full time. And so when you cut out all like the social expenses, it's like, oh my God, you have so much money to spend. So we kind of went through this phase of like abundance and doing lots of investing and learning about that to coming out of COVID and then all of a sudden being like, oh my God, we have no money. Like, what are we doing? And I feel like now we're coming out the other side again, which is like really shifting our mindset to be like, yeah, I guess back more into that like abundance mind frame and building a really good relationship with money. So you caught us at a good time.
I'm so glad. Well, let's actually just start. Like, can you tell us a little bit about your podcast and yourself, like your backgrounds as well?
Yeah. Do you want to give a story of like how the podcast started?
Okay. So it was in COVID, like where all good podcasts are.
I know, genuinely. I was like, tales old as time, yeah.
And I had just started full-time work. My mum had given me a copy of The Barefoot Investor, and I was like, okay, it's time to kind of get my finances sorted, get my shit together, basically. And I had started reading about this thing about investing. And realised
this thing
that
now dominates our lives.
I don't know.
But this is the crazy thing, right? I had literally just been through a finance degree, and through that whole time, it had not even occurred to me that I should be investing with my personal money.
That makes me feel so much better. Continue.
And so I started listening to this podcast all about investing, and then they actually put on their Facebook group in COVID that they were taking the podcast full time and were like looking to grow the team. And so I reached out being like, I'd love to be a part of the team. I thought I could get paid to research for their podcast. I was trying to like read the AFR more and be more across finance news, my new finance job. Anyway, I got on a call with them. We were chatting and all of a sudden we were talking about how they were two guys. Shout out to the Equity Mates guys. They had quite a sort of more male skewed audience just by nature of being two guys talking about finance.
Yep.
And they were asking me if I invest, and I was like, I do, but my friends don't, and it really annoys me because it's like quite a simple thing to do once you start kind of learn the basics. And I was saying, or we were both saying how it would be great to have something similar to what they do, but hosted by females, just because I feel like for a lot of women, having that more relatable voice is what makes a difference.
Yeah.
And they were like, cool, so do you want to do it? And I was like, excuse me? And like, do you have someone you would do it with? And that's when I gave Soph a call and I hand the story over to you.
Yeah, she called me and we were on the phone for like an hour and she was telling me about like all the intricate details of her day. I'm like, Maddie's like really dragging this conversation on right now. Like, what
I was
is happening?
so nervous to ask.
And then she's like, anyway, so do you want to come on a podcast and like talk about money? I'm like, what? But yeah, that's how it all started. So it was a bit of a COVID project. We just picked up some mics, and at the very beginning we took people along our journey. We were never teaching people how to invest, but we were showing people what our journey looked like, because we also were complete novices, still potentially are. But we would bringing on, wealth managers and people in the industry to teach us certain things. And now the podcast has really evolved with who we have become and our journeys working in the industry. And now we just really chat about money news, money tips, rich girl habits, things that are happening in the money landscape, and just make it as relatable and digestible as possible for people.
Oh my God, I love that so much. It's so big small talk coded.
Literally, when we were talking about it, we were like, it's like shameless pop culture but finance, and then we're like big small talk, like what you guys do for politics and news. And I was like, we're taking, for example, we did an episode about Road and Hailey Bieber, but what's the finance story behind that? So we take all these big fun stories that you're reading about everywhere, that are all over your social media, but then we talk about the money story behind it.
I love that so much, and I love that you're speaking to women with it, because I think what I struggle with, and it's exactly what you guys knew, which is why you started the podcast, but when you listen to finance guy podcasts, I find it, God forbid, I actually went to say bros and then I was like, don't say it. If you listen to a finance bro podcast, it's kind of tough, because the way they're talking doesn't really consider how many other things we have to pay for. Even when you talk about clothes and hair and makeup and this and that, and they're just you just save. And it's well, you're not factoring in half the other stuff that we do.
And there's also so much more than that. If you go another layer, thinking about superannuation, taking career breaks for family, or all these other things that, obviously
gender pay gap.
Exactly. Exactly. It's experiences that aren't lived by them, but are lived by us.
Yeah, absolutely. Can I ask the quite straightforward question about why is it that women have less money? Is it because of all of those reasons?
Yeah, I think it's definitely multifaceted. I think on the one hand, there's you go back in history, right? And there's been generations where women have been excluded from conversations about money. Not only that, there's been generations of women that didn't work. It's men that were the providers for families. And so that, number one, has been a shift. And so more women are coming into the workforce. And so when you look at statistics saying that women have less money and blah, 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 it's come from a generational thing that is shifting at the moment. But then if you look at the present day modern woman that's working like we all do, and save our own money and work hard for our own money, it's also that we have other challenges facing us. So it is more likely that women will take time out of the workforce to look after a family or do domestic work or caring work. And entailed in that is then you have periods of not being paid. You have periods of not being paid superannuation, which when you think about your superannuation, it's really important that that keeps compounding, and then you end up with less money in the longer term if you do have breaks from that. So it's definitely a multifaceted thing that is shifting. And particularly as more young women become a part of the conversation about money and building wealth from an early age, it will shift. But it's just, it's been history. It's
a reality.
History. It's a reality.
For those that are listening that are unsure of what we're talking about here, the extent, there was some stats on Finder that I found that showed that men continue to have significantly larger cash reserves than women. So the average woman would have about 30,000 saved in June compared to nearly 60,000 for men. It's double.
Yeah. Another part of that, which this is a massive generalization, but when you look at a lot of the research with how women and men spend, women tend to spend on people, like the people around them, and family and whatever else.
Thinking of all that.
Friends and whatever. But men tend to be, and this is a massive generalization, I'm not wanting to offend anyone, but men do tend to spend on themselves. And so if you think about why we have a smaller balance, it's because you're thinking about other people in your life that you're spending on, that you want to spend on, or that you need to spend on, compared to someone that's maybe, focusing on their own goals.
The other thing that is just circling in my head right now, when we first started the podcast, we found this quote that said, women are taught that the road to financial empowerment is learning to budget, and men are taught to invest. And it's this just different mentality shift of where if we want to do better financially, it's about cutting back and doing less and budgeting harder. Whereas it's almost and again, massive generalizations, but it's this mindset shift, what can I be doing more with my money to grow my wealth, as opposed to how can I be spending less? And I feel those different mindsets have such a compounding effect in terms of how your money grows.
That is so true, because I don't think anyone had a conversation with me about investing until recent years. And it's even funny when I think about it, like, God, not to like throw my parents under the bus here, but
We've all done
We
it, don't worry.
brought our parents on the podcast
Yeah.
and pretty much threw them under the bus there.
not to throw them under the bus, but like, I remember when it was our 21st birthday and I got like a normal gift from my parents, which was lovely, but my brothers on their 21st got stocks.
Wow.
Wow.
Now I'm looking at that and I'm going, what the fuck, guys?
Okay, a few follow-up questions. Do you know, were they already investing?
No, it was like to start
Okay.
them on their
Yeah.
journey.
So interesting.
At the time I thought,
I don't want
lame
stocks.
lame gift.
Sucks to be
Now
them.
I'm realizing that's such a
Fascinating.
weirdly ingrained thing.
Yeah.
Totally.
Interesting.
What was your relationship always like with money, like personally? When did it start to sort of, I mean, obviously for you it was for both of you getting into finance and choosing to study that, but like, was it something that was always interesting to you, or?
I have always been fascinated by how businesses work. And I think I, for some reason, always had this very real appreciation that like everything comes back to money. So even if I decided down the track, like when I was thinking about school and uni and what subjects I wanted to do, it was like, even if I decided down the track that I really wanted to be in marketing or really wanted to be a designer, it was like, in any of those roles, money is still going to be important because, you know, you only have so much marketing budget if the business allows for that to happen and all of those kinds of things. So for me, it was like, get the basics down pat and kind of go into the money space, and then you can sort of launch off from there. But I have found a real like love of that side of the business. It's just so interesting to me.
I think mum and dad ran a small business when I was growing up. So I always, like from day dot, the value of $1 was ingrained in me.
Yeah.
And I also like, I guess I associated hard work with money. You know, when I was like 14 and 9 months, I walked myself down to Brumbies and got myself the job because I thought, well, that's how I'm going to, you know, pay my way.
Yeah.
And I think as I've just gotten older, you know, money brings experiences, money brings freedom, money brings like me being able to choose how to spend my time. And so I've wanted to work hard to get to a point, or at least, you know, even with something like investing, have it in the background so that I know at a certain time I can take time out of the workforce, or I can start a business or whatever else. So it's always just kind of been associated with a type of freedom for me.
Yeah, I get that. I think for me, what I think my mental block came from, and it was something I sort of had to think about when I was prepping for this episode, even like, where did this come from, this like problem I seem to have?
When we were chatting, I was like, think about why you were...
Yeah, no, and reflect on that. And I did. And I think for me, I think I decided at like 11 or 12 years old that I was just not going to be able to understand it because I was bad at maths. When I was in primary school, I was good at English and stuff like that, but I couldn't figure maths out. And so in my head, I just find out like anything to do with numbers then was like, oh, well, that's just not my calling. Like, it's just not for me. And I think that weirdly compounded throughout like high school and everything like that, because I just never did maths. And so like economics, whatever beyond that was like, oh, well, stick to my strengths over here, and I'm not going to know about that.
That makes so much sense. It's like when even we used to talk about a lot, like the finance news and things like that. And this industry is literally built to make things seem confusing so that we rely on financial advisors and financial experts.
Yeah.
And so that, like, if literally at the most basic, like, numbers level, you're not feeling confident, like, that makes so much sense that you would just disengage.
Yeah. And then I had this like realization that it's like, you are an adult. Like, and I hear my great grandmother actually always gave the advice. She was very strict on like, you need to have your own money. You need to have your own money. You need to have it, and you will have your own bank account always.
Yeah.
And it was something she was, because like I guess for her it was like in the divorce sense and stuff like that. She was like, you need to have like, that is your freedom to be able to do that. Now I'm realizing she's right. But it is also, I think, this weird transitional phase that, I don't know if you guys feel this as well around your 20s, that like I am an adult now, I'm not a kid, but I still, I think, treat like that like paycheck to paycheck and like I want to go on a holiday and I want to do this, and it's like the thought of making grown-up investments or saving for a house seems still like, well, but I'm just a baby. And it's like, no, you're actually nearly 30.
Well, also you see like the people around you. I know with like a lot of my friends, like people are buying houses and people are having babies. Like 2 of my best friends have babies and I'm like, okay, so if I was going to afford a baby, like what the hell does that look like?
No, that was exactly the realization I had. I said, if I got pregnant next week,
tomorrow,
if I got pregnant tomorrow,
next week,
next week,
much of a
I'll schedule
muchness.
it in. And like, it's not even the knee-jerk reaction to be like, what are you going to do? And I think that was something I've kind of realized, not that I am anywhere close to that, but even wanting to invest in a good knife set and stuff like that. It's like, well, I'm not a teenager anymore. A Dyson, whatever it is.
Vacuum cleaner, not the hair. But if it makes you feel better, like this is very much the kind of thing that I think Soph and I went through probably about 18 months ago now, where all of a sudden we had this real like, holy shit, like when was everyone saving for a house? When was everyone doing this? And we felt so behind all of a sudden, because when you're kind of going through uni in that mid-20s, it's like everyone, it kind of feels like you're all doing the same thing. Like people are going on holidays, people are going out together, you're spending lots of money on socializing. And then all of a sudden people start buying houses and it's like, wait, when did we all decide that we were going to save the money to do that?
Yeah, and there's also something in, some people would get help, but no one's really being transparent about that either. So then you're like, oh my God, I must be super, super behind. But it's also just no one's talking about what their salaries are and if they're getting any financial help or if they're getting a loan or whatever it is, because it still feels so taboo to talk about.
Totally.
Yeah, well, we did 2 series called Taboo Money Chats, and we talk about both of those things, like the bank of mum and dad, how no one really talks about it.
Yeah.
We speak about not speaking about salaries with your friends and how to approach those types of topics, because at the end of the day, it is really important, because when you see other people and what they're doing, you can fall into a comparison trap and it can really bring you down about money, and then it builds into your own narrative of like, wait, am I really bad with money?
Yeah.
And then that's how it compounds. But having open conversations actually alleviates a lot of that stress, because if your friend has bought a house and they're like, mum and dad actually paid 90% of the deposit, you're like, oh, I'm not doing that badly. They're just in a different situation to what I am.
I also think as well, like if you're listening to this, and also reminding myself, because I keep saying I'm bad at money. Everyone's like, God, what is she spending? I'm actually not that bad. Like I'm fine. But like there are so many things. Like I saw this, like Monash University put out a stat recently that said 90% of Gen Z has felt financial stress in the past year alone. And it makes complete sense, because yes, like cost of living, and we know that. But then there's also stuff like buy now, pay later models that I think especially this generation has fallen into quite a bit. And the amount of friends I have in credit card debt, how did we get there?
It's like so full on. It's like we're in an era of consumerism and like such accessibility with technology. And I just think, for example, we don't even have TikTok Shop in Australia. But if you think about like American Gen Z, like you can at the click of a button just buy something from you've seen from TikTok, and there's so many trends. Like consumerism is rampant, and I feel like people have the younger generation are buying into that, as we do as well, we do as well. But of course, people feel financial stress when you're always constantly trying to keep up with the next big thing that's happening.
Yeah, I think that lifestyle inflation is what that's called as well.
I think we talk a lot about the impact of social media on our spending, and it's like we all know that social media is a highlights reel, but when you're scrolling Instagram and you're seeing people out for beautiful lunches or beautiful dinners on the weekend or on their next Europe trip, and it's like almost normalizes those kinds of behaviors in your mind, and you forget that actually like going to a beautiful restaurant for lunch every weekend isn't normal for our age. Like even, and this isn't, like I know that our parents' generation, there's the whole like stop buying smashed avocado thing. Like, yes, okay, we know that that's not really the issue. There are so many more macro factors that are coming into play. But at the same time, like when I talk to my parents about it, they're like, yeah, like we weren't going and spending hundreds of dollars on like beautiful lunches on the weekend.
No.
And I think that really is the impact of social media that just makes us want to leave, or like just normalizes these really glamorous lives.
I feel that so much. And I know I'm a like marketing dream. Like, and I know my weakness with that. Like I give myself a treat.
Yeah.
And I call it a treat as if I've ever denied myself anything. Like, and I haven't. But I do think it is of course, that highlight reel on social media. And like even stuff like Labubu's.
Oh, stop.
Like I would run it over with my
stop,
car
I'm
if
so
I could.
obsessed.
We literally just did an episode.
We were just in an episode, and I literally just have one with a little Prada outfit, and I'm obsessed. I'm obsessed.
It's outrageous.
It's outrageous.
Say, it's a good example then. Say you want a Labubu or you want
I want so
something
many.
like
I
that.
can't tell you. We literally just had this conversation in the
funny.
car
Like,
before we came in.
Like I need so many Labubus in my life.
See, I was a Sunny Angels girl. Like I was like
also
collecting them. If there is something like that and you know, okay, it seems like you really want one, but say you're like on the fence with one, how do you stop yourself and like check in on like what is actually necessary purchases right now?
Such a good question.
You have a good framework. You have a good quadrant framework.
Yes. Okay, so I have been checking in middle of the year about kind of where my spending is and how I feel about it. And Soph and I both did this exercise of giving ourselves a rating of 1 to 5 on where we're at financially. I gave myself a 3.
A sliding scale.
Which I'm like, look, I'm actually doing all the things. Like I'm transferring money into my savings. I'm transferring money into investing. But what I realized is I'm just doing it with no intentionality. Like I'm not aware of what I'm saving for or where my money is going. And so I've actually found this on TikTok. It's this quadrant. And you basically, every time you go to purchase something, you ask yourself, do I need this? So it's like, is it like bills, food, like things like essentials to get by? Do I love this? And the framework for that is in over 12 months, am I going to look back on this and be like, yes, I'm so glad that I bought that? Do I like this? Which is like maybe in 3 to 6 months, you look back and be like, oh yeah, that was good. Or do I want this? And that is like very much the instant gratification. And I suspect where
the serotonin hit.
Labubus come into it. Because
I don't know,
in
in
reality,
12 months time, I could be taking my little chica out.
Okay,
But it
like,
sounds like you
Sorry.
passed the test now. You can have a Labubu. Like, you're one of the
tell
few.
me, do we really think Labubus are still going to be cute in 12 months' time? This is the thing. It's like they're so, don't get me wrong, so fun. So fun.
Yeah.
But
good example.
it's like,
Yeah.
that's kind of like the framework that I think just helps with that sort of approach to
and
spending.
trying to keep your spending in those top 2 quadrants, which is like, do I need it, sustenance, or like, do I love it? And in 12 months' time, well, you know, necessity, yeah. And or in 12 months' time, will I still be like, I'm so glad I have purchased this?
Yeah.
Making a bit of a rule for yourself.
It's so true. I feel like Big Small Talk, a big thing that we're trying to do is like media literacy with people. You guys are like marketing literacy. It's like how to like clock when you're being taken on a ride right now. It's so smart. And the reason it's hard to differentiate, especially when you're like scrolling TikTok or scrolling Instagram, is they'll throw phrases at you like a capsule wardrobe. Like this is an investment, but you will love this in like 12. And it's like, no, you won't. Like you won't, I promise you. But it's so easy to fool people because they know what to say to you to make it.
100%.
I was actually reading the other day about how Zara as a like business has done so well because it's obviously based on such trends, but it's like people go hunting in Zara because they just want to be a part of the next trend, and you know that their stock is going to turn over in that next week. So if you don't get it, like, you know, they just play on.
It's a scarcity mindset.
It's the scarcity mindset. They play on like a consumer's, like, unfortunately the way that we're wired, which is that if it's not going to be there next week, you want it now.
And it is unfortunate. I was talking to a guy friend the other day and I was like, yeah, like sometimes tops are like $300 and that's not even the craziest thing I've heard anymore. And he was like, what? And like, how often are you? And it's like, well, not that often. But like, when you think about the fact that that is like, they would never spend that much.
No.
And they are not buying it as a monthly treat or something like that.
Yeah.
Like that is such a hidden cost that we're fronting. For, like, you don't have to, obviously. But a lot of people feel that need to as well.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's just like that social media exposure that normalizes so much of this stuff because you see people that you follow, that you trust, that you love, and then they're talking about like, what am I wearing? And they talk about this top and you click onto it and it's like, oh, it's like $300 or $400. And it's like, are we all doing that? Like, because I love her and I love her top and I want to look like her. And it's like all of a sudden this stuff, it wears you down. Like, I feel like the first time you see it, you're like, no, I can't afford that. And then the 10th time you see it, you're like, oh, maybe we're all just wearing $300 tops
Maybe
now.
that's normal. It's not.
It's not.
It's not normal.
Let us tell you it is not.
And also with like, you kind of coupling that in, I think this is for everyone, is, and especially for Gen Z, is like you're also dealing with a lot of work insecurity at the moment.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what your career experiences were, but like working in media for me, it was this whole idea if you get paid an experience for the first few years out of uni, and or you're getting paid like criminally low salaries, and you do get there eventually, but like, how is that going to be sustainable and to be able to save when you're young like that? Workforce is also so against you.
Yeah.
The context is that I've just quit my job, my
Congrats.
corporate job. Congrats.
In saying that.
But yeah, we've been having conversations about, it is this really funny mindset shift of, I mean, I was working all throughout uni anyway, full time over the summer. I was like always working, and now I'm at this point where I'm like, oh my God, I don't have a standard paycheck coming in. You know, I used to get it every single month, the same day, every single month thing. So used to that. Now I'm like hustling to do my own work. And it is one of those funny, yeah, I guess it's honestly just a shift in mindset to be like, I have to be more vigilant of my spending now.
Yeah.
And like making sure that I'm still setting myself up properly for the future. For example, I now have to pay into my own super account.
Yeah, I've been doing that this year.
Yeah.
And I was like, what?
Yeah, because my employer just used to do it. And so then you like, it's just like taking a step back and being like, okay, what are all the things I need to be thinking about? Like we've had experience even with, if you run your own business or a side hustle or something, you get the experience of, okay, I have to put money aside for tax because you have to pay tax at the end of the year.
Yeah, learned that the hard way.
We learned that the hard way when we first
Oh
started.
yeah,
this
that
podcast.
that was the one good warning I got. It was like 30%, put away.
Put it away. But even that, like now, if I get paid for freelance work, just, you know, a portion has to go to my super, portion has to go to tax, a portion I should put away in savings. And it's just like reframing. It used to be automatic behind the scenes for me, but now I really have to take control of it myself.
Yeah. I also think if you're not in your 20s as well, you're taking risks like that, and it's so encouraged. But even if it's not going out solo and doing your own work, it's like also a lot of messaging of like, well, if you don't love your job, like this is the time to experiment, start somewhere new. And that's a really scary thing to do. Like I agree with that advice, but it's also to start at the bottom somewhere new, or take a step back financially to be able to take a step forward.
Yeah.
Is a really scary bit of advice in this current economy.
And I 100% know that my next job, I will probably be taking a step back because I'm shifting, or I'm trying to shift the industry that I'm going into, and I have no experience. So I'm sitting at this nearly 30 cusp. I came out of like a managerial role in finance, and I'm like, well, I'm going to be at the bottom, and that's okay. Like that's what I want to do because I want to learn. But like, it is a funny, like, oh God, what's it going to be like?
I know. And I feel like now that we're openly talking about and everyone's feeling nice and stressed, that like we should be talking about this stuff because you're not hearing this from your friends all the time. So knowing all of this, what are some practical things? Like, it was actually something you guys said that I sort of nodded as I read it. You talked about money type, and I was like, yep. And then I was like, what the fuck is money type? like, what's that?
Yeah. So I think the most important place to start is like actually understanding more about your own money story and your relationship with money, because that is just going to frame so much and impact so much of how you feel about all of this stuff. Even like we talk about leaving your job or having like less financial security. I might be super comfortable with that, and it might be like way harder for the person next to me. And it's because we have different kind of histories or stories that we tell ourselves with money. And so we came across this great quiz that you can do. It's by another really incredible woman in kind of the financial literacy space, Mel Brown, where you answer all these questions and it tells you what your money type is.
There's 4 different money types, and you can be, I think it's like the worker, the creator, the realtor, and
It's like attachment styles.
But it's so great. But aren't you like, I want to do this
I'm like,
quiz.
let me do the quiz.
But it kind of shows you, it walks you through, like, I think, for example, the worker is someone that, like, you think that money will come from hard work and success will come from really hard work, compared to a realtor who's someone's going to be like super like emotionally intuitive, might overspend, or like might think that, you know, the money is going to come from risk taking rather than being like really not risky like the worker. But like having that fundamental attachment to, okay, that's actually what I am like with money and that's how I feel with money, will then help you set up your goals or understand why someone else might have a different perspective to you in a conversation. It's just like a really good base to also understand your strengths and weaknesses when it comes to money, because maybe a strength is that, you know, you are really good at saving, but a weakness might be that you actually overwork yourself to do that. And so it's just like getting a really good framework of like where you're at and how you think about money.
God, that makes so much sense.
I think to like give a really practical example of that, like when I kind of went deeper into my money story and why I am the way I am, I grew up with like my parents, my mum, her dad passed away like younger. So he had Parkinson's and him and his partner had saved their whole lives. His partner, my grandma, my grandma and grandpa had saved their whole lives for their retirement. It was like, let's work really hard. And then when we hit retirement, we can like go and live our life. And they didn't get to do that because he did pass away younger. And so I feel like my mum, as a result, has always had this like priority on experiences and yes, like obviously financial stability and like making sure you're in a good situation, but also like living in the now. And Soph and I always joke when we kind of compare our approaches to money, that is very evident in me. I really struggle actually to like look into the future and see what I want to be and like work towards that because I'm like, yeah, but you never know what's going to happen. So I personally feel like I put a lot more emphasis on like my current self and enjoying life, whereas like I feel like you have kind of a different experience with that.
Yeah, I think, well, it's like shifted recently, but maybe I've been the one that's a little bit more of a scarcity mindset. And so us understanding that even and our differences is like then when we talk about our goals and whatnot, they're going to look slightly different because you have a different upbringing with money. And it's so fundamental. It's so fundamental. Yeah.
It's so funny, like, even to hear, which makes so much sense. Like, obviously, you equate work and how hard you work with the money you earn. Weirdly, my mindset, and I'd have to kind of reflect on why, but I've never even... I've always been very work driven and like career driven, and I haven't necessarily equated that with finances. Like it's more about the work and getting to certain work goals, and it's always just this like almost delusion of like, yeah, and that'll sort itself out.
Do you feel like it will be okay in the end? Like,
yeah,
because I have a little bit of this myself. It's like I am someone who works really hard and who is career oriented, and so it's kind of like, well, surely if I keep working this hard,
this checks out.
Yeah, like you're gonna climb the career ladder. And like even when I think about like family and kids and all of that kind of stuff, like personally, I'm like I am still gonna want to be going back to work, like at least at this stage. That's how I feel. And so it's like I guess I don't have some of those same requirements maybe in terms of like setting myself up in the same way. Maybe that's Delulu as well. I don't know.
So is there like a, really compare it to attachment styles, is there like a secure we should be working towards?
No, you should be exactly who you are. Like as in like you should be the style that you are, but it's more about understanding what that style is so that you can set up like the goals and whatnot appropriately for yourself.
And so that money makes sense to you.
Yes, and money makes sense to you. Exactly.
And also each style has like their strengths and weaknesses. And so it's like, I think being able to be aware of where your weaknesses are and where maybe like you might, be susceptible to different things. It's about awareness and understanding yourself better so that you can stop kind of falling into that comparison trap of like, why does that person always do that? And it must mean I'm behind. It's like, no, you actually just have very different relationships with money.
Is there, like, this is a quiz. Should I put it, am I able to put it in the notes? Like, I feel like people will love that as well. Link. And then what are some practical, like going to this new financial year, if you are now reassessing your savings, your money, what are some tips you can actually implement and tricks?
There's so many.
Rich girl habits.
Like maybe habits. Like the easiest things you could implement in the next month or so.
Yeah. I'm like cautious to talk about an audit because I feel like it's just like...
It makes my heart rate spike every single time. Literally you say it and I'm like, oh.
I know.
No, talk about it because it's important.
It's probably, we think it's kind of step one is... You need, if you're feeling a bit avoidant of money or if you're wanting to take a bit of a reset, it does sound like an arduous task, but you do need to take a bit of an audit of where you're at. We talk about it in the sense of like an afternoon audit. Like sit yourself down, set yourself 2 hours, pour yourself a glass of wine, have a cup of coffee, whatever it is.
Make it glam.
Like make it just like a nice experience for yourself. I'm the type of girl that will put on some good music, light some incense, make it a bit romantic.
I love this.
And just assess where you're at. Like how much do you have saved? If you have any investments, what are they looking like? If you have any debt, how much that is, like how much is that, whether it's credit card debt or a home loan, and have a look through. I say like do a year, have a look through a year of spending, which sounds like a lot, but if you download like 12 of your bank statements and just have a look at like the incomings, outgoings, really high level, super high level, have a look at some big purchases. For example, if you're saying, every second week I'm spending $300 and it's on like retail clothing. Like, is that necessary when maybe I want to be saving a little bit more? Just get like a good comprehensive understanding of where you're at before you start the task. I did it a couple of weeks ago. Before I started, I felt so avoidant of sitting down to do this. And afterwards I felt so good. Like I actually found out that I was in a spot that I was not disappointed, but I was lower on the scale. When Maddie talks about the sliding scale of 1 to 5, I'm at a 1 with my money at the moment for various reasons.
Whereas I haven't done this exercise, so I might be going down.
But it was like, okay, that's great. I now know where I am and where I need to go, because I didn't realize.
That's so true, because you get, especially if you're like a more anxious person, sometimes you'd be putting it off because you assume it'll be worse than it is, and it's not that bad. But would a lot of people's apps, like even banking apps, almost do that for you as well?
Yeah, 100%. You can use like apps. There's different softwares that you can use, like plug in. The thing is, like, if you take the time to do it from the beginning, there's like softwares that you can use that you can plug in a bunch of information and it'll track it for you during the year. So definitely use technology where you can.
And do you guys track like monthly or fortnightly or what, every 6 months or at the end of every financial year, anything that could be like tax return?
I just have a folder in my emails for tax. And so every time, like whenever I'm buying anything that I think could be tax deductible, I'll make sure to get a receipt emailed to me, and it just goes straight into that folder, because then I know at that time of year, all I need to do is open that folder and everything is in there.
Genius. It's like so straightforward.
I will say though, like if what Soph was just explaining is like making your heart rate rise, like it is for me. The way that I am approaching this is like sitting down with a group of friends to do it, because I also think the added element that can be really helpful there, and I don't know, not everyone is like this. I'm like, if I'm going to do something, if I'm going to go to the gym, I have to go to the gym with friends. Like, but for me, it's like actually doing it with friends. Number one, makes it more fun. But number two, allows you, or like brings accountability into the group chat, because it's like all of a sudden if I'm saying that I want to spend less on this or do more of this, and then my friends are there, and then we're going to all check back in a few months time, it's like that element for me is super motivating and just makes it like genuinely more enjoyable.
And that's like our second tip, is to like build your accountability crew, because at the end of the day, we've spoken today a lot about like money can be quite isolating, it's very personal, but when you have people to talk about it with, even just to like ask questions, like if you're feeling confused about something, or you just want to be like, you know, I'm going for a pay rise at work, like can we just like have a chat about it? Like slowly building that crew makes it such a it makes it a better experience.
And I think with that, a lot of that is, I mean, obviously just talking to people, but saving receipts and doing audits, like a lot of that is habits, right, that you're building. What are some habits that you can implement, and then also how do you stick to them?
We just spoke about this recently on our last week's podcast, building in micro habits, but we were saying that it takes like 21 days to build a habit, and so you should just pick one after you've like kind of assessed where you're at and you're, you know, trying to create some goals or whatnot. Try and just pick like one micro habit that you can bring into every day. For example, one of my micro habits that I'm trying to bring in at the moment is I've stopped consuming money content. So I used to, which is, I think, because by way of us always...
Wait.
You're like, hold on.
No, in the sense that Mads and I produce money content. Yeah. And so then in my outside life, if I'm going for a run or a walk or whatever, I'm listening to like history or like pop culture or
Big
politics. Yeah, exactly. So
no, I actually totally get that. It's like I don't listen to podcasts now because it feels kind of work orientated now.
You want to disengage. Yeah. But what I realized is when we were actually researching for last week's episode, I was listening to some just other money content for it, and I was like, oh, I feel so motivated after listening to that. So my micro habit is that once a week, listen to a different money podcast and just get a different perspective, or find an Audible that's about money. I think there's a book, I've forgotten the name of it because I haven't started listening yet, but it's about the secrets of like 40 millionaires, and like just listen to something to re-engage. Like that's a micro habit that you can build in.
Yeah, I think that's such a big part of like changing your relationship with money, as well as like seeing it as something motivating in the way a lot of those finance bros do, and not something that's like a slap on the wrist.
Yeah.
I think getting really clear on what your goals are and where you're going can help with that, because sometimes I think especially women, and again to generalize, it's like we can have this sense that it's like, no, like money's not attractive. I don't want to be like seen to be going after it or wanting to be rich or anything like that. But actually it's like, no, like having money and building your wealth is about freedom and like being able to make choices and take the trip or leave the job for the better one because it's a better opportunity even though it's less pay. And so I think when you can reframe it like that, all of a sudden it's like you can start to feel very comfortable with being like, yeah, I want more money.
Yeah, I think it's like when you talk about relationships and career and whatever it is that are like your pillars, make money one of them. That's okay. What about you, Maddie? Have you got a micro habit?
Yes. So mine at the moment is I am trying to have more of an abundance mindset. And so at the end of each day, I try and journal and write down 3 things that I'm grateful for each day. But what I'm doing is actually making one of those money related. And it's because throughout the day, I just want to be like more aware of money. And so I think if I can say like, for example, like I was about to say my example is going to be I didn't get a parking ticket even though I stayed over. But it's like being more aware of the kind of good things that happen with money throughout the day to shift my mindset of like money is a good thing. And it's like something that can be positive and that I can actually re-engage with, because if I look at my last 6 months, I have definitely been quite avoidant and just like not being highly engaged with like what I'm doing and where my money is going.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah, and you can do other things like if you're wanting to learn about new concepts, like set yourself up every day, you have to learn a new word. If you're struggling with, you know, the other side of abundance, which is say you're being scarce or you have a lot of debt, set up a habit where it's okay, well, if I've got a lot of credit card debt, pay off a little bit every day, even if it's $2 or $3, and just like setting up that routine of, you know, getting yourself out of it. There's so many little micro habits that you can build in, and then hopefully it becomes more of a mindset shift later on.
I think that is such useful information, and also just having this conversation in general. So I'm so thankful for you guys for coming on today. Is there anything that's like a final thing that you would want to include?
I asked this in the car to Maddie. I'm like, she's going to say,
any
like
other
one
things?
final
One final thought? I actually
mine.
rarely do it. I don't know what just came over me. I'm really sorry about that.
I fully said it to Maddie in the car. I'm like, what if there's the question of like, what's your big thought for the day?
Mine is go and listen to So Invested. Yeah. Shameless plug.
Good one. No, but genuinely do.
Mine will be, if you're wanting a community to talk with about money, always feel free to slide into our DMs, because we always have people coming in to us with dilemmas, or they just need to chat, they want to ask a question. It can be a really scary space, money, and sometimes you feel like you have a stupid question, but it's not a stupid question.
No stupid questions.
So we are the people that you can genuinely ask us anything. We'll respond. We love chatting to people in our DMs.
We literally love it.
We love it. So slide in if you've got questions, and we'll be your confidants.
I think people will love that. And yes, please, we'll put the link in the show notes to everything as well. But thank you guys so much for coming on, and I will have to get you on again before you go to New York. So let us know when you leave.
Thanks for having us.
You're so welcome.